Hi, welcome to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, Ed Smith, and so real excited to bring to you today the first Clown League One recap of all the teams after the draft and after the rookie draft that followed right after that. I pulled up the Fantasy Pros rankings because just wanted to get an idea of what the experts, if you will, think of the team as we go through each team, and so we'll start with the Fantasy Pros um, teams in order that they have them picked finished to win as far as dynasty overall rankings and what they kind of give. Now, one of the observations I have is they have a 50 point, I think, ranking system, if you will, and the worst team, which actually is Clown One, it's actually our team. I drafted this with Justin, is the lowest team at 82 and the highest team at 100 points. So it's a very tight range at the top, and so we kind of find that these teams are pretty close, and there's not a whole lot of difference between team one, team two, so to speak. So I think that it was a really good draft as far as the balance and what we have here, and I think we have some really good fantasy players. But we'll start to go through them, and I'll run through them all quick, and then we'll dive deeper on each of the rosters and kind of how I see the build and what I see within that team. So the top rated team was River AD, and they actually ranked QB3, RB5, tight end 5, RB6, or wide receiver 6, and flex 9, which gave them a total score of 100. Patrick Surtain was second with a total score of 99, and they were the wide receiver 1. That was kind of the notable thing that took them to the top. Jay Buffett was number 3 with a 97 score. So as you can see there, the top 3 are just 3 points apart with where they are. Jay Giddy was 4th with a score of 94. Good Jenkins was 5th with a score of 92, and then DT Hall was 6th with a score of 91. And so those were all the scores with 100 down to 91. That would be the playoff teams, if you will. And so I always look to get to the playoffs with my teams and be a top 6 team. And then right at 7, which there's no real good reason to want to be 7th. That's just kind of the first loser, if you will, in the tournament. That's Jason Parro with a score of 87, and then Matty Robb at 8th with a score of 86. Cacho in the 9th spot with a score of 85. Sam Bunning with a score of 84 in the 10th spot. Prescott with a score of 83 in the 11th spot, and Clown One with a score of 82 in the 12th spot. So in our first draft, we are the worst team, and then we're the worst team going forward according to Fantasy Pros. So it'll be interesting to see how year 1 and then year 10, how it all goes, according to that. But then just to take a look at each of the teams and just kind of where I see them and what they have, and we'll try to run through it pretty quickly so we don't elongate it. But I know the guys that are part of the league are interested to see, kind of the rest of the league and that sort of thing. So we look at River AD's team. The team is built around the 2 young quarterbacks, Kyler and Trey Lance, but it's also very balanced, and that's what gets it up there to that number 1 rating. Winston's available for bye week, so they do have some kind of way to sub in there or have an injury and not be just decimated with a 2 quarterback system. That's important to realize, is it's 2 quarterbacks, not a super flex. So if you don't start a quarterback, you take a 0. The overall balance of the starters gives this team this top rating. So, kind of keep in mind that top to bottom, this team was pretty good, as far as the starting lineup. But the health of running backs, Saquon and Kamara as the top 2 running backs, with CEH as kind of a bye week flex play. Cordell Patterson is a bye week flex play as well. Don't give it much depth because they would actually both start in the flex, so they can go into the running back room, but then you have to put a lesser than tight end or flex or wide receiver in that flex spot. The wide receiver room is full of some pretty quality vets with Michael Thomas and Evans and A.J. Brown. And then just some rookies that are notable on the roster are Ford and Mechie and Ritter. So, they do have some things that they're building for the future there that, are worth noting. But that's kind of what gives Fantasy Pros the information to rate this team number 1. And so we'll see how River AD does managing it out and where we sit at the end of December, with this team. The second team, Patrick Surtain, this team is built around the top wide receiver room, and so with Devonta Adams, Cooper Kupp, and Stephon Diggs, and Jalen Waddle, Godwin, Ayuk. Now, remember, we have 3 flex spots, so all those people are penciled in there really in the starting lineup. So, you can move them into the wide receiver room, but then you have to take some of that depth and put it in the flex spots, and then it can drop off pretty quick if you don't have some more depth in a league that starts 12. So that's important to kind of keep in mind. The quarterbacks, kind of have youth and then veteran with Mahomes and Brady. So kind of both ends of the spectrum. And then Mayfield and Brissett. And so as we're filming this today, we don't know where Mayfield's going to start, if he's going to start. We have an idea that Brissett will start some of the weeks, but bye weeks are late. This can become problematic with taking some zeros. And then an injury could really decimate this team as well and drop it out of that 2 spot, I would imagine. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind as we go, and the quarterback rooms in these kind of leagues become pretty important. Dobbins, Damian Harris are the starting running backs, so just not sure what's going to happen with Harris in New England. So with their running back stable and drafting some more, so it does create some speculation. Now behind it though, he does have Melvin Gordon and Gus Edwards and Henderson, so there's some speculative plays there. Probably Gordon is the top of those, and just not knowing what Gus really becomes or what the health of Akers is, and how Henderson will fit in there, will create maybe some depth at the running back. And the team does have Carson as well, but with the Walker pick by the Seahawks, we're kind of guessing that Carson might be all done in his journey in the NFL. So wishing him the best, but just expecting that maybe his time will be up in the NFL. The tight end room struggles. It starts with Jared Cook and Ferkser, and so but you can't draft everything in a deep league like this. So sometimes you punt a position, and this is just kind of where he went there. Some notable rookies are Dobbs from Green Bay, Christian Watson, and Phillips. So there are some people here that are upside plays and maybe can come into something. And then also Terrence Marshall from last year's a second-year player that's an upside, play for Patrick Surtain. So we'll be anxious to see. Does he finish second? Does he get that first-round bye? Or does some of the injuries and depth catch up as we go, or maybe a suspension, that doesn't materialize for Deshaun Watson as long and allow Jacoby Brissett to cover up the buys and start. So we'll be anxious to see how that kind of comes along. If we look at the third-ranked team, Jay Buffett, built around the wide receiver room as well, and does have some balance though, but it's kind of a little bit younger wide receiver room than the last one we looked at with Metcalf and Lamb and Deontay, and then Judy, and then the older Woods, and as we call them, Bobby Trees, and then Kirk and Claypool, give some reserve spots and maybe fit into those 3 flex spots depending on injuries and to Woods and how he recovers. The quarterback room is young and full of talent with Burrow and Mac Jones, and then Tannehill is the third. So as long as those bye weeks don't match up and there's no injuries, probably should be pretty good going forward in the quarterback room. The tight end room, I kind of rated that as average with Irv Smith. Not sure what he is. He's a lot younger than most people think. And then with Hooper moving on to being the top tight end in Tennessee, we'll see how that comes into fruition. The running backs, Akers and Edmonds and Carter. So there is some plays there, but we'll see what Carter's role is for the Jets. We'll see what Edmonds' role is for the Dolphins. I mean, two people that are going to new situations. I mean, Carter being in the same situation, but with a bell cow coming in, and then Akers returning from injury. A lot of question marks there, but it could be some plays that make sense. I mean, youth is on the side, which is good, and then Shakir and Jones are some notable rookies that are on this team. So we'll see what happens here with this team and how it progresses. It'll be interesting to see if it fits the playoff mold as we go here. Moving on to Jay Yiddy and just kind of thinking what that might look like. This team is one of the more balanced teams I think on the docket, and kind of impressed with where that is. It's got Najee and Eckler and Aaron Jones, so I feel like they're a little bit old in the running back room, with Tyreek, Debo, and Cooper being top end assets in the receiver room, but also getting older. So Debo's older than we think as well. So there's some age going on there. The tight end room of Ertz and Ingram, it feels like they've got to win now, but they're younger than you might think. I mean, Ingram, I believe, last time I checked, was about age 27 or 28, somewhere in that vicinity. And Ertz is only like 31, and I say only 31, but you compare that to Kelsey at 33, maybe there's some more years left in the tank there. The quarterback room of Lamar starts real well, and then Mariota, when he plays, Mariota is one of the better quarterbacks in our league because of the rushing upside that he gains. So, it can always be something that is good in the fantasy world, and so that's something to kind of hang your head on there. The thing that I worry about here with this particular team is the risk of quarterback injury or Mariota losing a job or something like that, or the bye weeks, just taking the zeros and making sure that they are at the right spot of the year that you can afford to maybe offset a loss or something. With it, putting a zero in there might be real rough to recover from. There is Howe and Brian Robinson and Thornton with Strong as rookies on the team. So there are some abilities there with Howe and Strong maybe to get a job and maybe start the right weeks. But it feels like a lot of luck has to happen there for this team to actually be in that fourth position, just based on the quarterback room. But we'll be anxious to see how things move around and how it's all comes together for this team. But it's ranked currently as the number 14 in our fantasy league. And then as we move on to Good Jenkins plays in some other leagues with us, and so anxious to take a peek at this. And he kind of built his team around the tight end premium scoring, as he went and got tight ends that are going to win the tight end room every week. And he's got 3 for 2 positions plus the flex. And with the 3 PPR tight ends, he's got Kelsey, Waller, and Andrews. And there won't be anybody that he faces that has better tight ends. I mean, just has the monopoly on them. And so, you're just gonna, even with an injury to one of those 2-3 guys, he still trots out 2 better than everybody else. And so, I mean, he can kind of withstand some injuries. We look at his quarterback room with Aaron Rodgers and Cousins and Fields. I mean, they're all NFC North quarterbacks, so I thought that was interesting that he's kind of playing in the North, but definitely adequate. And barring a number of injuries there, it feels like those are going to be starters for the full year. I mean, I think all 3 of them will keep their job for the year, so really kind of gets going there. Barring injury, I think should be fine. And then the wide receiver room is a little bit older with Keenan Allen and Brandon Cooks and Thielen and Parker, then with some youth with Eli Moore and Kadarius Toney. So there's some players that can score points there. Now, understanding that when you build heavy on like tight ends like this, you're going to give up something. So he did give up on the running back room, and so he trots out Singletary and Mostert, but that could become something. And so he's got a bunch of other things behind it on his bench, so it kind of can come around and maybe catch some lightning in a bottle. And when you throw enough darts, you do hit the target at times. So understand what he was doing there, and so I'll be anxious to see if he gets his team to the playoffs. And then, as we always say, you get it to the playoffs and you just never know what happens. I won a league right out of the 5 spot, so him finishing 5th wouldn't be bad. Some notable rookies: he's got Olave and he's got Malik Willis. If we said at the beginning of the year, what do you think of Malik Willis? Actually, when we were drafting this team before the rookie draft, we thought Willis was going to be the 102 in this draft, or 101 possibly. So something to keep in mind there. As we move on to the 6th and final playoff team, according to Fantasy Pros, now just important to just kind of keep that in mind. This is what Fantasy Pros really thinks of this team, is DT Hall. And this team is built around a good running back core and a good wide receiver core. And so I kind of feel like this is maybe more of an old school build, where you just drafted running backs and you drafted receivers, and then you filled in with the last quarterback and tight end. And while I think that works, and I do that actually in my 1 quarterback leagues, I actually play it exactly like this. When you start adding 3 PPR with 2 tight ends starting, and you start adding 2 quarterbacks, not a super flex, I think you get yourself into big trouble real quick in this kind of a build. And so as we get into this, I kind of feel like maybe that is how Fantasy Pros maybe scores, because they do have this team rated 6, but I think it's going to be a real trouble to get there. So let's just dig into the running back room and what we think is good here. I do think the running back room is absolutely stacked. It's the best one in the class, or in our league here. I want to remind us that we have 25-year-old Christian McCaffrey. So, a lot of people see McCaffrey, they say old, and I say, well, he's 25 though, so he's not real old. So it's got that, and then it's got the youthful Javonte Williams, and it's got Gibson, James Robinson coming off the injury, and I think that's a pretty good start with the running back room. Starting two, you can always put the other two in the flex, and so you're halfway home there. Looking at Justin Jefferson and Terry McLaurin and Allen Robinson, DJ Moore, Quinius St. Brown, or Amon-Ra St. Brown, I should say. Actually, this is Amon-Ra on this team. And Myers on here is depth too. Just a ton of receiver depth and top end. When you can put Amon-Ra and DJ Moore in the flex, and you can decide if you want to put Gibson in, and then you have guys like Robinson and Myers as your depth pieces that you can sort of maneuver around, to balance off. I like that part of the build, but then we start to look at the quarterback room. When you do it this way, it gets real ugly. He's going to start Jared Goff and Darnold. Now, as long as Darnold holds the job, it's okay, because you got to start two, and you take zeros when you don't start two, and then all he's got is Heineke behind. So it just didn't work out real good with the rookies and that sort of thing. So it's picked to be a playoff team, but one injury to one of those quarterbacks, Darnold loses job, or anything like that, and this team is getting a zero every single week, and in a position that scores about 20 just on average, and maybe 30, maybe 40, and it's just, that seems like a big spot to be dropping. So just kind of think that through, and then at the tight end room, Hunter Henry and Will Dissly, and Bates and Granson on the bench. So you just got to work your way through two of them. A little bit of youth with Bates and Granson, so that's good, and can kind of go on from there. Looking at the rookies, he's got Snoop, he's got the great name, and then Kevin Harris are his two rookies that he has, and so we'll see how they come on, but we'll be interested to see if he makes any moves, or if he's just looking to build for next year, or if he rides it out. Fantasy Pros does have this as a playoff team. I can't really see that here, just knowing the nature of the quarterback injuries and buys, and we'll know a little bit more about the buys as I record this today. Next week we'll know a little bit more about the buys and what they look like. So now moving on to the 6 non-playoff teams. So these are the teams that Fantasy Pros has disrespected, we're going to say, and just thinks it can't make the playoffs. So it'll be interesting also to see from this point on how many of these teams actually do make the playoffs, and how they all go. And I have these ordered that way. When we get to the end of the year, I'd like to be interested in how these names change and what they think, because as trades happen, obviously things can take place. So it'll be interesting to see the moves that are made and how that is. So our number 7th team is Jason Parro. And this seems like a boomer bust team, and so it's kind of a fun build. I always enjoy building some of these boomer bust teams. Scary in the dynasty world, because if you go boom, it can go boom for a long time, and if it goes bust, it can go bust for a long time, and you can be rebuilding for a long time. Really tough, and you find that you're just selling your soul all the time. Quarterback wise, the quarterback room is thin, but does have Herbert and Hurts, and so those are two top 5 quarterbacks in a 12-team league with 2 starting 2. So I can get it. Like, that makes a lot of sense to me. But they do each have bye weeks, and if they get hurt, or if Hurts loses a job next year, that can become problematic. Now, one good thing is that the quarterbacks are flush in the draft next year. So if he gets hurt this year and you finish last and you get the number 1 pick, and you get a good pick, that can be something of value to you. So I can see it being something that makes a lot of sense. The running backs that he has, I like. They're a little older, but I like them. Mixon and Zeke and playoff Lenny are the backs with Miles Sanders. So the room is pretty good, as far as that goes. But it feels like it's aging. So it needs to win this year. Like, this team needs to come on and go get its way to the playoffs and upend one of those top 6 teams and get there and win it. and get some money. The wide receiver room feels really thin to me. It's got Robbie Anderson, Hunter Renfro, DJ Chark, Rondell Moore, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. So, yeah, if you start three of them, that's okay. But if you start having to put some of those guys in your flex spots, then it becomes really, really rough. Um, and it does have Antonio Brown. I kind of left him out just because we don't know where he's going to play, if he's going to play. But it just is something that we need to look at. Now those can be picked up off the waivers though, so I mean he can make some moves there that I could see that all changing, pretty drastically before the season starts. So nothing to panic there, but just something to keep in mind as far as that goes. The tight end room is pretty stout as well. Where that features Knox and Hawkinson and Gesicki as the third tight end. So there can be a flex play in there as well. Um, with Calvin Austin being the rookie notable that I guess this team features. Moving on to the eighth place team, or according to Fantasy Pros, it's Matty Robb, and Matty Robb plays in a bunch of leagues with me. I enjoy having him in the league, and excited for him to be part of Clown League number one. This team has a nice little blend of youth and veterans, and the tight end room kind of stuck out to me as I looked over the roster with Pitts and Freiermuth, and then Everett as a third. And I have a team like this, and I just love that team. I mean, like I'm watching that team this year and thinking I can really go for a win when you start with those young tight ends that just seem to be ascending. The quarterback room with Russell, Wilson, and Carr and Mills is kind of got some veteran savvy there. With the young tight ends, the veteran savvy, that you know what you're going to get with them. Probably have three starters there for the full year. I don't feel like any of them will lose their jobs. So injuries are the only thing you're betting against, and it should be pretty good as long as you can keep the health along and you don't lose two of them to injury. Should be able to navigate that towards the playoffs as far as the tight end room and the quarterback room. The running back room is got Spiller and Penny, so a little bit light there, but he's got a bunch of running backs that can step into roles with White and Pierce and Eno and Haskins. I mean, there's just a lot of running backs that we just don't know what their roles will be, and so fast forward 4 months in the beginning of the season, this can all change. So I guess I just don't want to I don't have a whole lot of judgment there, but say there's a lot of darts. He's throwing a lot of darts, and he just needs one of them to hit or two of them to hit, and he'll be pretty good. The wide receiver room seems young and talented to me. I mean, it's got Devonta Smith, Gabe Davis, Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Pierce, Tolbert. I mean, like these are all young rookie guys that we just don't really know how they're gonna fit. But you don't need them all. You just need three of them or four of them to really take off, and it'll take you to another level. So I really like Matty Robb's team and what he's put together here, and he's got the older quarterbacks, but everybody else is like young and young and young. He's just gonna put him with Penny, and he's gonna just ride it out and see where it goes. And so if it doesn't work this year, it'll work next year, and that's a good philosophy, or I enjoy that one. I mean, it feels very similar to what I would build, but we'll get to that here in a couple minutes. So then when we start to look at the ninth ranked team, Cacho, this team has the running backs, full of quality. I mean, Dalvin Cook and Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry and James Conner. I mean, that's star-studded, really. I mean, there's four of them that are good, and the three quarterbacks of Josh Allen, Stafford, and Matt Ryan is just crazy good. The receivers are younger, but they're pretty talented. I mean, with Lockett, Pittman, Pickens, and Mooney, and then some notable players on this team are Matt Corral and Justin Ross. And you'll notice I skipped over the tight ends because they're just kind of guys he picked up off the waivers, and I can respect that. He's just going to probably try to find those tight ends and see where this goes. I could really see this team actually finding its way towards the playoffs, even though it's rated so lowly by Fantasy Pros. I could see this team just hitting its stride with those running backs if they drive it home, and the quarterbacks. I mean, they're just going to score points, and I don't see holes in the other positions either. So it'll be injury related, but I could see that team really taking it to the next level. Team number 10, Sam Bunning is this team, and I always feel like Sam Bunning throws together a good team every league, everywhere. It may not look like much at the beginning, but it just sort of becomes a team in the end. And so glad to have Sam as part of the league. He's part of many leagues with me, and so enjoy him each and every time he's in the league. And here it looks like he just built a strong lineup. Like he looked at the 12 players that are going to start for him every week, and he really built it strong. And then he'll figure out the bench is what the way it looks to me, because the bench is kind of weak. I mean, but it can't go strong everywhere. It's just impossible in a draft like this with 12 guys that are know what they're doing. And so like what he's put together here with Dak and Deshaun as the quarterbacks. But if Deshaun's suspended for 6 weeks, he's probably looking at it next year just off the bat, like because he's only two quarterbacks strong, and so that could really damage the situation. And then with Monty and Eli Mitchell and Hunt, the running back room is a little bit average, and I guess I'm thinking as long as he gets to play this year, then he's good. But Hunt and Mitchell and Monty, those all could be needing new jobs next year or soon. So it could be a rebuild pretty quickly, and so we'll see what happens. But I have a lot of confidence knowing Sam. He just seems to twirl the baton a little bit and turn it into something. So I'm sure he has a plan that I just haven't figured out yet or followed. The receivers look good to me. Hollywood and Juju both in new spots. T. Higgins back in his familiar one, and Mike Williams returned to his familiar spot as well. So pretty good there. It looks like he also tried to collect some tight ends, maybe to trade later. I counted the sheer volume, and he has 17 of them on the roster, so 17 tight ends. So he decided he was going to use his bench spots effectively. And if we all had to start two, he was going to hold 17 of them. And if he has 17 of the 32 starters, then we're going to be looking for tight ends at some point. Somebody's going to come and knock him, and they're going to be worth something. I mean, he starts with Kittle, Schultz, and Higbee. I'm guessing those are his top ones. I saw Tanyan on there as well, and so those feel like they could be all top 15 guys to me. And he could really monopolize the top half of the league from the tight end. Now, I don't think he's going to go against the other team that had the big tight ends, but everybody else is going to be begging for tight ends with his 17 at some point. So I can see what he's doing there, and we'll just be anxious to see how long the build takes in his process. Looking at Prescott, that's the 11th team here, and he's probably very happy that we're in the league, so we can be 12th and he can be 11th. But his team is built on youth, and so I like the way he's built the team. I mean, I'm sure the Fantasy Pros doesn't seem to like it, but I like it. So I'm not sure which is right. But he's got Jamar Chase and London and Jameson as well, and then Sky Moore. So he's got a lot of young receivers here, and so that just it seems like he's got more receivers on the bench coming out of his ears. And then with Etienne and Dillon and Ronald Jones and Ramondre Stevens and Gainwell and White, he just has all these young running backs. And then tight ends are Alberto and Komet and then Parham on the bench. And so he just went with a team that was just loaded with youth. And so you can see what he's doing. He's waiting for next year. He's going to get some quarterbacks, and then he's going to run this thing out and take a shot at it for a win. So I can see exactly what he's trying to do. I mean, probably looking at that 101. I guess we're going to challenge him for the 101, apparently, according to Fantasy Pros, because we're the worst rated team. But Clown 1. We actually in this league, kind of a funny story. Maybe we'll get more into it when we break down the team and the draft at more depth. But just want to allude to it here. We had 13 owners come in, or 12 besides me, and so wasn't sure what to do. And so I just kind of offered to pay back that owner, and then I decided that we'd share the team. I'd just pay for the team, but we'd share it and have a co-owner. And then I decided I liked it so much that I thought I'm going to have a different co-owner for each team in these series. And it was really good because I got to pick another person's brain on each of these draft builds. And even though I use a very similar philosophy on each of them, it's kind of fun to hear what other people think and how they view players, and so how I can fit that inside of the same blueprint. And I think after Justin and I have talked many times on the phone, he was kind of looking through this, that we kind of hopefully he learned something from my processes of how I do it. But I learned from him some likes and dislikes of players, and some just different nuances about how he drafts that I really enjoyed. So that helped build the team. When we jumped into it, so looking at the overall team, I feel like we're pretty proud of our running back room, and it just kind of fell to us. But we have JT and Swift and Jacobs and then we drafted Walker and Hall. So we really are full in the running back room, and then at quarterback we're kind of full there. And people that know me know I like to draft some quarterbacks and have some. They're lower end, but we have a bunch. And so Danny Dimes and Zach Wilson and Jimmy G and Locke and Wentz, a pretty big room. And then the receivers are a little bit light. They're Dodson, Bell, Amari Rogers, and Robinson from the Giants. Tight ends are light as well with Tremble and Harrison Bryant, and we did draft McBride later. So it's a team that, while we're real excited about the running back room, and know we have some quarterbacks to trade and gain additional capital if that opportunity presents itself. It's a team that we do intend to finish in the bottom three and get some serious draft capital next year, and then go for that win either in 2023 or 2024, really. So always looking out 3 years is what my blueprint really calls for, trying to win in year 4, or year 3, I should say. But sometimes we go at it in year 2 and get a little bit quicker on the program, and sometimes it takes 4 years till the 4th year to get really building where we're trying to go. So it doesn't happen like in year 3 every time, but it does give us some good barometer on how we go. So thank you guys all for watching. I mean, just wanted to break down this league and let me know who you guys think is gonna win the league, and where people are gonna stack up, and we'll try to put some of the league details in the chat, and we'd love to hear your comments listed below on some of what you think is good about this league, and what you think just doesn't make any sense from my breakdown, especially if you're an owner of a team and you think I missed something. I would love to hear it as well. So thanks for joining the Fantasy Football Clown Show. Again, I'm your host, Ed Smith. Looking forward to coming back to you with our team breakdown from Clown 1. That should be coming up in the next day or so. So just encourage you to like the channel, and subscribe to the channel, and like this video itself, and that keeps me producing content. Have a great night, everybody.